our first in our fall 2023 seminar series with Dr. Basheerah Enahora, who is one of our newer assistant professors and faculty members, and I'm really excited for her to be able to share with you all about her research and the work that she does. And I'll do a quick bio, and then I'm going to hand it over to you for your presentation. But Dr. Enahora is an assistant professor and extension specialist focused on nutrition education and behavior. And her research is motivated by the desire to reduce health disparities in lower resource communities, and based on her experience in clinical practice as a registered dietitian, working primarily with underrepresented minority adults and teenagers. Dr. Enahora utilizes innovative technologies, including SMS text messaging and digital apps, while aiming to influence dietary behaviors and improve health outcomes among disadvantaged families. And she has lots of incredible projects and work that is happening here in AHS. And I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Enahora to our seminar series. So thank you for kicking us off. Can everyone online hear us okay? We do like thumbs up or yes, perfect. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks for that introduction, Annie. So I'm going to stay close to the slide and not move around too much since we logged me in on my computer, which has caused some logistical challenges, but that's okay. We're working through it. So today I am going to talk about a program that I kind of jumped right in on when I started about a year ago with the FNAP team to develop and evaluate a new high school nutrition education program called Fuel for Life. So I'm going to take you through that development, curriculum development, program development process, as well as plans to evaluate the program, which are still ongoing. So Annie has already introduced me. I won't go into that any further, but just an overview of what we're going to cover today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the program itself, the Fuel for Life program itself. It's a mouthful. I'm going to talk about our pilot testing and how we went about testing the curriculum. I'm going to talk through some future impact evaluation, what our approach is there and what the timeline is. Give you a little bit more detail on some of the objective diet measures that we're doing in the impact evaluation, and then take questions. So Fuel for Life, or FFL, is the acronym that I like to use because it is a little bit of a tongue twister. It's a new program that has been developed. Again, it started kind of right when I joined last November, and it's designed to teach high schoolers about nutrition and health. And our Expanded Food Nutrition Education Program, or FNAP, educators go into 9th grade health and PE classes or 9th grade Foods 1 classes to teach the curriculum over 6. They have to do at least 6 weeks, but they could also have the option to do an 8-week program as well. And they teach high schoolers about nutrition and health with some engaging activities. Each lesson has a recipe tasting so that they can try new foods. There also is mindful eating integrated throughout the curriculum, as well as mindful movement to just help you think about food and nutrition in different ways. We try to design the curriculum to make it relevant for high schoolers, really fitting in with where they are in their life stage. So this age, they are out of the house more, spending more time away from mom and dad, really looking to establish their own independence, develop autonomy. So we wanted to provide them with basic cooking skills. From some formative research that I did while working on my dissertation, that's what we heard a lot from parents of high schoolers, that they really are interested in their youth, their children, learning to cook, learning to make some basic meals so that when they come home and they're on their own, they can actually feed themselves and not wait for mom or dad to ring the dinner bell. So we wanted to provide them with some basic cooking skills. And we tried to make that as interactive as possible, even in a PE class where there may not be as much equipment, but we still wanted to give students the opportunity to develop some basic skills. We also provide them with basic nutrition information around food groups and why eating well is important. How does it help us to reduce chronic disease, but do it in a fun way that's relevant. We talk about some quick meals that students can prepare. Bowl meals are really popular with this age group, where they can mix and match different ingredients to create their own meal. So one of the lessons is all about creating your own meal with different types of cuisines, and how can you do that really quickly. We talk about snacking smart, because this is an age group that they're on the go a lot, they're not at home. And so we wanted to make sure that they knew how to choose healthy snacks. We also talk about eating out. Again, they're on the go a lot. And we wanted them to be able to make nutritious choices no matter what environment they're in. This age group is also growing rapidly. So we talk about how nutrition changes with our needs, whether that's for sports or whether that is when we are on the go. How does nutrition change based on where we are? We also talk about making some quick meals in the microwave, and then also wanted to make sure that they could make some handheld things like sandwiches and wraps. That's what this age group likes. The last two sessions are optional. So our FNEP educators have to teach the first 6. And then the last 2 microwave meals and handheld meals are optional. The curriculum, we hoped, uses the social cognitive theory as its foundation to help provide youth with knowledge and skills, again, to eat well and live a healthy life. We hope that they would then place some value or some outcomes expectations on those knowledge and skills that, helps them to understand that eating well helps them to grow healthy and to live healthy as they're, going on to become independent adults. We also provide them with opportunities to learn by observing and doing, with some hands-on activities, so that they can then apply that once they leave the classroom. And then finally, we hope that we can help them build self-efficacy or confidence to both make healthy choices and also to cook a little bit more, were our goals. And you can see our behavioral outcomes based on those social cognitive theory constructs all the way to the right. So hopefully through all of these hands-on activities, they would eat more fruits and vegetables, drink less sugary beverages, have the confidence to cook at home, practice some safe food handling. So we have food safety integrated in each of the lessons. And then also hopefully employ some more mindful movement and mindful eating strategies as well. So to try to test out whether or not that theory is actually what happened in practice, we did a pilot test of the program. We had educators in 7 schools throughout North Carolina, some urban, some rural, and we wanted to do some face and process validation to make sure that what we thought we actually put into the curriculum is what was actually being delivered and also being received by youth participating in the program. So we conducted classroom observations in the spring. We had some experts, Katie was one of them here in the room, review the curriculum and provide feedback. And I'll get into some of those details. We did interviews with teachers whose classrooms we were in, what their perceptions were of the curriculum and program. And then we conducted focus groups with the high schoolers who were participating. And then we also gathered feedback from the educators who were piloting the program. So I will go into our results from our observations, which were really critical because we realized very quickly that lessons 1 and 2 were really, really heavy in content. And after about 7 minutes, the high schoolers started to disengage. There was just so much information that we were trying to cover in some of the lessons that they tuned out after about 7 minutes, whether it was picking up their phone or trying to talk to a classmate. They were not engaging with the educator after about 7 minutes. So that really helped us to go back and revise the curriculum to break it up more, include some hands-on activities after about 7 minutes to really make sure that we're keeping the youth's attention. We also made sure in training going forward that we gave that, let the educators know if you're starting to lose them, here are some strategies that you can employ. Things are really different in the second thing that we observed in observation is that things are really different in a Foods 1 class versus a PE class. Because the Foods 1 classes, they're actually getting to cook and practice the recipes. Their experience of the program was really different. And so we had a lot of discussion with how do we bring that same experience into a PE class where the equipment is limited and the ability for the students to have that more hands-on engagement is a bit more limited. And so we made some adjustments to the curriculum to try to mirror the two environments where the program was being taught a little bit better. Also realized from observations that many of the lessons had similar activities included. And if students did a matching activity in one lesson, they were less enthusiastic about doing a matching activity in lesson 3 or lesson 4. So giving them more variety was really important in helping them learn and making sure that they were retaining information. And then finally, it was pretty obvious from observations that in some classes, the educators weren't getting a lot of support. So they were, it's a lot to go into a PE classroom where you have 30 ninth graders all staring at you at one time, and you're the only person who is the facilitator. So we really needed to train our educators and give them more skills and tools to help them navigate those environments. What we learned from our expert review and from interviews with teachers, we started to see some similarities across. So the experts who reviewed the curriculum, we had 2 from Department of Public Instruction who are responsible for the learning standards for health and PE classes and the learning standards for Foods 1 classes. Both of them reviewed the curriculum to make sure that the goals that we outline in each lesson were they actually delivering on those standards. And we got checks from Department of Public Instruction, North Carolina Department of Instruction on the curriculum in those areas. But what they did say was that, again, lessons 1 and 2 were very content heavy. And we heard that from teachers who we interviewed as well, that we're just losing the high schoolers with so much information, good information, but just they were not absorbing it after about 7 minutes. We also had experts in nutrition and communications and family and mental health who also reviewed the curriculum. Had a chef who reviewed the curriculum for the recipes and making sure that they were appropriate for this age group. And what we heard a lot from those experts was making sure that we were more inclusive in the program, that we were taking cultural foods into consideration, both in the way that we were talking about nutrition throughout the program and also in the recipes that were included in the program. So we went back and tried to make sure that we talked about different body types. We showed images of different body types. We talked more about more cultural foods and things that the youth could do to improvise and make recipes their own, and including some other cultural items. Another thing that we heard, I talked about the connection with the standards, but another thing that we heard from both experts and teachers, more so from teachers, was there were an opportunity to tie in more with the students' environments. So where could we talk about the school cafeteria more in the curriculum? Is there an opportunity to maybe do a field trip within the curriculum to expose them to other parts of their community? Can we talk more about where they're grocery shopping in their community and what foods they have access to? So again, we went back over the summer, revised the curriculum based on this feedback to incorporate as much as we could to incorporate these suggestions. not an issue, but FNAP has its own federal standards that it has to actually follow. So while we'd love to include everyone's feedback, we still had some parameters that we had to work within to make sure we're meeting all of the FNAP federal standards. So moving on to results from focus groups with youth, we talked with about 70 youth in classrooms across the state. Average age was about a little over 15. And majority were African American. We talked with students who were in urban areas and rural areas a little bit more. The urban areas had more students in those classrooms, and they were more PE classes. So we just saw more students the days that we were in urban areas, because there were 3 PE classes back to back with 30 students per class. And the majority of the youth were female. Some of the themes that we gathered from focus groups were around engagement and making sure that we're engaging them throughout every lesson, helping them with developing that sense of autonomy. We did get some positive feedback around the program possibly impacting their diet, which was great. We got tons of feedback on recipes that they wanted to see included in the program, foods that they wanted to see included in the program. And then we got some feedback on whether or not they were interested in learning digitally versus traditionally. So in terms of engagement, youth were interested in as much hands-on activities as possible. Again, the program was being delivered and received just based on the environment of being in a Foods 1 class versus a PE class. So those youth in PE classes wanted to do more cooking if possible. So we've revised the curriculum to try to make that happen. Just, given the limited environment, the educators are bringing in a wagon full of equipment. So it does make it a little bit more challenging, but as much as we could in the curriculum going forward, we've broken things up and tried to pair students in smaller groups to make sure that they were getting those hands-on experiences. Something else that came up in focus groups was they were interested in competing with each other and having challenges. So as more game type elements that we could include into the curriculum, they were interested in that. That's a little bit of a challenge with the educators, just in how much they have to prepare. But one of the things that we are doing going forward is that we're having the educators, again, break them up into small groups from the beginning of the curriculum so that they kind of know who their teams are and they can do some small competition between when possible. Another theme from focus groups was around really gaining their trust and building rapport, again, fostering autonomy. They really wanted, if possible, the educator to ask them what recipes they were interested in seeing in the program and make some modifications based on that. So that, again, is a little bit more challenging in trying to implement a federal program when we've got guidelines and we want the program to be consistent across, being delivered consistently by every educator. But what we've asked educators to do going forward is, as much as they can, if there's a recipe, try to customize it for the students as much as possible. Let them do maybe some variations of their choosing, where they can choose different fruits or different mix-ins or add-ins. So we tried to give some customization into the program as much as possible so that youth feel like they have a voice in what they're learning. And then we also heard in focus groups that they were really encouraged by an educator who built rapport with them, who was personable. They talked about themselves and they opened up about what is going on in their lives or what happened to them as a child, so that the teenagers could relate to it. So giving that feedback to educators of, going into these classrooms where you don't know you at all, try to open up and be a little bit more, share a little bit more about yourself and what it was like for you being in high school. The students, the high schoolers really enjoyed learning and listening. We also had an educator who was Spanish speaking, and his ability to connect with native Spanish speaking high school students was also really valuable as well. that can't be replicated everywhere with every educator, but that was also some feedback from the students that they really valued someone who they could relate to. Another theme from focus groups was around diet, and the students shared that this really helped them to become more aware about their diet and some of their habits. So if you can remember being in high school, being on the go, you probably skip breakfast. These high schoolers are skipping breakfast, they're skipping lunch, they're just not eating all day until they get home. So they shared that the program really helped them to be more aware that they are doing that, to pack some snacks with them when they can, eat school lunch, but to try to include a little bit more, just to be more aware of eating more frequently throughout the day versus some of their current habits. So that was encouraging, that even if we don't change their diet, numerically, if we don't see a change in their diet, they're at least aware. And so from that increased awareness, hopefully down the line, we can actually change some behaviors. And then again, students shared that recipes, they wanted to see more cultural foods included in the recipes that they were able to either see demoed or to actually make themselves. And they wanted increased seasoning as well. So we went back, which probably means salt, but we went back and adjusted the recipes to include more seasoning and also to include more cultural foods as well. And then finally, when we talked to youth, I thought this was pretty interesting. We asked them about how they like to learn. We asked them about including technology into the curriculum. About 90% of teenagers have cell phones, but they were not really interested in a digital program. They shared that COVID really impacted the way that they like to learn. And as much as we could deliver things in person, that was their preference. They didn't mind maybe some things being an adjunct to the program, like being able to access recipes on YouTube, but the core curriculum, they wanted it to be in person as much as possible. So I thought that was really interesting that teens are pretty much tied to their phones and their devices, but in terms of learning in school, they really want things to be in person and hands-on as much as possible. So moving forward, we collected qualitative data from the observations, focus groups, and interviews and expert review this spring, analyzed that this summer and included it into a new version of the curriculum. And then we have educators who are delivering the curriculum starting this month and through the spring of next year. I believe this month there are 6 educators delivering the program starting mid-October. And then in the spring, slated to have another 6 to 8 educators delivering the program in the spring. 2 weeks ago, we collected, I'll go back. So 2 weeks ago, we collected some impact data, pre-program data from one of the programs, one of the schools where the program is being delivered. And I'll talk about that for the phase 2 evaluation. So going forward for phase 2, we're going to look at impact and or effectiveness. It's not a randomized controlled trial, but we're looking at effectiveness of the program. Does it actually change diet behaviors? Does it actually change diet? And then we're also looking at our process and assessing how many schools we're able to reach. Did the implementation of the program go as planned? What does that mean in terms of maintenance of the program moving forward? FNEP has had a number of other extension organizations from other states reach out about the program. So we want to provide them with some impact measures if they decide that they would like to use the program going forward. So our design, we're going to have both a dissemination sample and an evaluation sample. The evaluation sample is where we'll collect some additional measures in addition to the standard FNAP survey that has to be collected pre and post. And for that evaluation sample, we're looking at rural areas and urban areas, 2 schools. And then for the dissemination sample, that we're going to be looking at all the schools that received the program, either this fall or the upcoming spring, and comparing that with overall North Carolina data for high schoolers who are in health and PE classes. We will also take some objective dietary measures, and I'll talk about those in a second. And then we're also looking at some additional survey measures around nutrition knowledge and self-efficacy to cook more or to make healthy food choices. So for our objective measures, the FNAP survey does a good job of asking about diet and about behaviors, but it is definitely a short-term measure. It just asks the teenager in the last week, how many times did you do X, Y, and Z? How many times did you eat fruits and vegetables? How many times did you wash your hands before cooking, etc.? So we're going to collect some additional measures, and one of those, which I'm excited about, is an objective diet measure using a veggie meter, which measures is an objective measure of primarily fruit and vegetable intake, but it doesn't measure every fruit and vegetable. It only measures fruits and vegetables with high carotenoid. And it uses light spectroscopy to measure the carotenoids that are what give the fruits and vegetables their pigment that get deposited into our skin. And so it looks at approximates our fruit and vegetable intake for about 6 to 8 weeks. The caveat is you have to be eating your richer pigmented fruits and vegetables, because those are the ones that are higher in carotenoids. So if you're eating like iceberg lettuce all the time, unfortunately, it's not going to give you a really high score, carotenoid score. And it measures from 0 to 800, with 800 being the highest. So the higher you are on that score, pre or post a program, the more fruits and vegetables you're eating, approximately. So as I mentioned, we took some pre-program data a couple of weeks ago at an urban school, and then we'll go back mid-November to take post-program data. And then ideally, we would go back again in January to then look 6 weeks after the program. That's typically when people's carotenoid levels would peak. So working with the school to organize possibly coming back in January as well. So we'll have an approximate measure of how many, fruits and vegetables, whether or not their intake increased pre-program or post-program. We're also doing a breath sample where we have students just breathe into a glass tube through a coffee stirrer, and we collect their breath in that glass tube and send it off to a lab. And that breath sample gives us an approximate measure of sugar sweetened beverage intake, short-term sugar sweetened beverage intake. So it uses a carbon isotope obtained from the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and it measures approximately whether or not you've been drinking a lot of sugary beverages primarily. So also collected those samples, and we'll do that pre and post to compare teenagers' sugar sweetened beverage intake and whether or not that changed based on the program. And so that'll take place this fall and spring, and then we'll hopefully have great impact to show for FNAP and for anyone who is interested in implementing the program in another state as well. We've got the FNAP national conferences planned for February, so hopefully we'll have some preliminary impact data to show in that conference in February. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize. I know you said the first 6 months was required, but the Fuel for Life curriculum, is that the required curriculum change, or is it an optional curriculum? together if we choose to get that in person.
Yeah, it is optional. So what the educators do is they will approach a PE teacher or school system and ask, instead of, hey, you doing your normal nutrition module, can one of our educators come in and teach it for you? So it's a great resource for the teachers. They kind of get to just observe and take a break and not have to worry about teaching for 6 to 8 weeks. And the educators bring in all of their materials, the recipes, the food tasting, all of that FNAP supplies. So for a PE class, it gives them exposure to not only just nutrition, learning about nutrition, but getting to taste new foods that they wouldn't normally do in a PE class. And for a Foods 1 class, it really helps to stretch the teacher's budget a lot because they do labs that include food in Foods 1, but they don't get a lot of money to do it. So it really kind of helps stretch their budget too.
And so you talked about the preschoolers not eating breakfast and lunch, and how much of that it's made me think a lot, because I'm very interested in how we think about food insecurity in college students. And the message that we have about food insecurity asks things like, how do you skip meals, right? And so it's making me think, like, with this age group as well, the ways that we typically understand how food insecurity looks in adults don't
match up. Yeah.
Food insecurity might look like for everybody. So did you all think about that? I mean, I'm guessing yes, like there are some questions or thoughts about, some of the, I mean, yes, definitely the students you all are working with who are food insecure. So I don't know. I'm just like, did that come up? How did it come up? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so
You said that. And I was like,
yeah, so that's interesting because these were all schools that have universal free and reduced lunch and breakfast as well. So it's really more of the student's choice to not eat, just either they didn't make it to breakfast on, I think they have like a very short window with picking up breakfast. So either they didn't get there on time to pick up breakfast, or they didn't like what the lunch option was for that day. And so they just chose not to eat. So we have included some discussion around that. And I should have asked. Did you all hear the question? You may not have. So Annie was asking about food insecurity for this population and the measures around that. So the standard FNAP survey doesn't ask about food insecurity. The measures that we're collecting for the impact don't ask about it. And yeah, like I said, in order for FNAP to come in and teach the program, the school has to qualify for free and reduced lunch. So they all have universal breakfast and lunch available. The students just aren't choosing to eat. We did have a lot of focus group discussion about why that is. And most of their feedback was, one, the menu they have a month-long menu and it's the same food over and over. They get tired of eating it. Two, they a lot of times don't recognize the food. They don't know what it is. It's strange meat. I don't really want to eat strange meat. Or two, it's just a lot of feedback was everything is whole grain. And it just doesn't taste good. So they just don't like the taste of it. And we had discussion around, well, you tried foods here that were also whole grain. So what is the difference in our focus groups? And their response was getting to make it themselves. They knew what was in it and they were more willing to try it. It is. Yeah, so we definitely have tried to include more discussion around some of those habits of how do you plan to make sure that you can get breakfast on time, and what are your options in the cafeteria that you could choose that you might look. We're also having some discussion with some of the food districts about how do they involve youth more in school meal planning so that they they do feel like, oh, I recognize this food because I'm part of this committee. Yeah, very tricky age. Some of the urban schools too, they can actually get DoorDash delivered to the school. So a lot of them choose not to eat school lunch and I guess save up what little money they have and then order food to be delivered.
Thank you.
All right.
Dr. Enahora, for your talk today and for your presentation and,
Thank you, everyone online. I was just coming to say bye. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it for our first fall seminar series for 2023. And yeah, coming up next, we have Dr. Joy Morgan, and the date has escaped me, but it's coming up soon.
the
Check your
30th?
calendar.
The
That
30th,
sounds
because
right.
I was supposed to be initially on the
That
30th.
sounds right.
Here's my info if anyone wants to reach out.
Thank you all so very much. Yes, and then Friday for our graduate students, we do have a wellness professional development event that will be at 11:30, and all the information about that has been sent out. But if you need additional information, let me or Desiree know and we can help you all out. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll stop sharing. Bye, everyone.
why